Daniel Blake, a dedicated cardiologist in his early 40s, had always been committed to his patients. His days were filled with heart monitors, stethoscopes, and consultations at a prominent hospital in New York City. Despite the busy life, Daniel found solace in his modest one-bedroom apartment, a small but cozy refuge after his recent divorce. The bustling city outside seemed to be a world away from his quiet sanctuary. One chilly November morning, Daniel's world turned upside down. Michael Lawson, a wealthy businessman in his mid-40s and one of Daniel's patients, had been admitted to the hospital with severe heart issues. Daniel had done everything by the book, running tests, adjusting medications, and monitoring his condition with the utmost care. Yet, Michael's health took a sudden turn for the worse, and he died unexpectedly. Daniel was devastated. Despite his efforts, he found himself at the center of a storm. The hospital's department head, Dr. Simmons, known for his uncompromising and harsh demeanor, wasted no time in making Daniel the scapegoat. The investigation was swift and unyielding. The accusation: Daniel had been negligent, leading to Michael's death. Daniel was dismissed from his position, his reputation tarnished overnight. With a heavy heart and mounting frustration, Daniel decided to visit Michael's grave. He hoped to find some closure, perhaps even a sense of peace. The cemetery, with its neatly lined gravestones and the soft rustling of autumn leaves, seemed to offer an ironic contrast to his turmoil. At the graveyard, Daniel wandered among the tombstones, lost in thought. The cemetery caretaker, Mr. Harris, a kindly elderly man in his 70s, approached him. Mr. Harris was not just a caretaker but also Daniel's former high school history teacher. They exchanged pleasantries, and Daniel's heart softened a bit at the sight of the familiar face. The conversation was brief, but Mr. Harris's comforting presence helped Daniel to cope with the moment. As they spoke, Daniel overheard two men nearby speaking in a foreign language, their voices tinged with a mocking tone. He was able to understand a few words, which hinted that they were discussing the very situation he was grappling with. Suddenly, Daniel's attention was drawn to an unusual noise, a faint moan coming from the ground. His heart raced as he turned to Mr. Harris, who looked equally puzzled. The noise seemed to come from Michael's grave. The two men, intrigued and concerned, moved closer to investigate. With a sense of foreboding, Daniel and Mr. Harris found a nearby shovel and began to dig. The process was slow, their movements filled with a mix of anxiety and determination. The moaning grew louder, and with each shovelful of dirt removed, the situation seemed more surreal. Finally, they reached the coffin. To their shock, it was not Michael Lawson inside but Jake Turner, a homeless man who had been mistakenly buried alive. Jake's eyes were wide with fear and confusion. He explained, his voice trembling, that he had been tricked into substituting for the cemetery's grave diggers. In a cruel twist of fate, he had been locked inside the coffin and left to die. Daniel and Mr. Harris helped Jake out of the grave, and the three of them stood in stunned silence, trying to process what had just occurred. Jake's presence at Michael's grave was a chilling reminder of the errors and injustices that had led to this point. Daniel's mind raced as he tried to piece together the puzzle. How had Jake ended up in Michael's grave? What did this mean for the case against him? And most importantly, what had really happened to Michael Lawson? With Mr. Harris and Jake by his side, Daniel knew he had to uncover the truth. His dismissal from the hospital had not been the end. It was merely the beginning of a journey to clear his name and seek justice. But as he stood there in the cold cemetery, the road ahead seemed daunting, fraught with obstacles and uncertainties. With the startling revelation of Jake Turner's presence in Michael Lawson's grave, Daniel Blake found himself at a crossroads. The discovery was more than unsettling. It was a glaring indication that something far more sinister was at play. Daniel, now accompanied by Jake Turner and Mr. Harris, had a growing sense of urgency. His reputation, career, and sense of justice were all on the line. As the chilly evening air settled around them, Daniel knew he had to act quickly. He was determined to uncover the truth behind Michael Lawson's death and his own wrongful dismissal. But where to begin? With Michael's body missing and the bizarre circumstances surrounding Jake's burial, the path to justice seemed shrouded in mystery. Daniel's first step was to seek help from someone he could trust. He thought of Sam Collins, a former firefighter who now worked as a security guard. Sam was known for his resourcefulness and tenacity, traits that would be invaluable in the unfolding investigation. They had met on several occasions, and Daniel knew Sam would be a reliable ally in this complex situation. The next morning, Daniel and Mr. Harris visited Sam at his security post near a commercial building in downtown New York. Sam was initially taken aback by the gravity of the situation. As Daniel and Mr. Harris explained the bizarre events of the previous night, Sam's eyes widened with concern and intrigue. "We've got a lot to unravel," Daniel said, his voice filled with determination. "Michael Lawson is missing, and there's something deeply wrong with how this whole situation has unfolded. I need your help to get to the bottom of it." Sam nodded, understanding the seriousness of the situation. "All right, Daniel, let's figure this out. I'll use my contacts and resources to dig deeper." Sam's involvement proved invaluable. Using his connections, he started gathering information on Michael Lawson. They soon discovered that Michael had been under immense financial pressure. Rumors of massive debts and legal troubles began to surface. It appeared that Michael had been desperate to escape his creditors and had faked his death as a means of evading them. But there was more to uncover. Through their investigation, Sam and Daniel learned that Michael had planned to disappear and join his wealthy father abroad. His disappearance had been carefully orchestrated, involving fraudulent documents and manipulated information. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but questions remained unanswered. As Daniel delved deeper into the case, he began to understand the extent of the deceit. Michael Lawson's plan had been elaborate and well-coordinated, involving several parties who were complicit in the charade. The hospital's quick blame on Daniel seemed less like a coincidence and more like a carefully executed part of Michael's escape plan. Amidst these revelations, Daniel's personal life took a turn for the better. During a visit to the cemetery, he had met Emily, a 5-year-old girl who had recently lost her parents. Emily's stepfather, Lucas, was an alcoholic and unfit to care for her. Daniel felt a deep connection with Emily and decided to adopt her, providing her with a loving home. The process of adoption was challenging, but Daniel's resolve was unshakable. He fought tirelessly for Emily's guardianship, motivated by a newfound sense of purpose. She brought a sense of hope and warmth into his life, making the quest for justice all the more significant. Meanwhile, Sam and his friend Tony, a former detective, continued their investigation. Tony's experience and detective skills proved invaluable in tracing Michael Lawson's movements. They discovered that Michael's attempt to flee the country had been thwarted. His plans were falling apart as he struggled to maintain his deception. As the investigation progressed, Daniel's suspicions grew. It was clear that Michael had been manipulating the situation, using Daniel as a convenient scapegoat. The more Daniel uncovered, the more he realized that his own dismissal had been part of a larger scheme designed to divert attention from Michael's fraudulent activities. Daniel's pursuit of justice led him to confront Dr. Simmons, the head of the department who had been instrumental in his dismissal. Daniel's confrontation was tense but necessary. He presented his findings, laying bare the inconsistencies and wrongful accusations that had led to his unjust firing. Dr. Simmons, though initially defensive, was forced to confront the reality of the situation. The investigation into Michael Lawson's disappearance and Daniel Blake's wrongful dismissal had taken significant strides, but the journey to justice was far from complete. Daniel, along with Sam Collins and Tony Roberts, continued to delve into the tangled web of deceit surrounding Michael's elaborate escape plan. One crisp morning, Daniel, Sam, and Tony met at a small cafe to discuss their findings. The cafe's warm ambience was a stark contrast to the cold reality they faced. Sam laid out the details they had uncovered so far, spreading a series of documents and notes across the table. "Michael's plan was more intricate than we initially thought," Sam said, pointing to a stack of papers. "He had connections who helped him forge documents and create a false identity. It seems he was planning to escape the country and live a luxurious life abroad." Tony nodded, his detective instincts kicking in. We need to find out who else was involved in this scheme. Michael didn't pull this off alone. There must be others who played a part. Daniel's mind raced as he absorbed the information. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that his dismissal had been part of Michael's broader plan to divert suspicion. Michael's disappearance wasn't just a personal escape. It was a calculated move to avoid facing his financial ruin. The team's breakthrough came when Tony traced a series of transactions linked to Michael. The financial trail led them to a small but suspiciously well-funded offshore account. With Sam's help, they managed to identify the account holder as one of Michael's associates, a man named Richard Green, who had been acting as Michael's intermediary. Daniel and Sam decided to confront Richard Green. They tracked him down to a high-end apartment in New York. The confrontation was tense. Richard, realizing the gravity of the situation, initially denied any involvement. But under the pressure of Daniel's accusations and the evidence Tony had gathered, Richard eventually cracked. "I only did what Michael told me to do," Richard confessed. "He promised me a hefty sum in return for my services. I was just a middleman." Richard's confession revealed that Michael had manipulated several people to carry out his escape plan. The revelation was crucial, but it didn't yet resolve Daniel's situation. The next step was to locate Michael himself and gather concrete proof of his wrongdoing. Meanwhile, Daniel's personal life was taking a positive turn. The adoption process for Emily was progressing well. The little girl had become a source of immense joy and motivation for Daniel. Despite the turmoil surrounding him, Emily's presence offered a semblance of normalcy and hope. As Daniel, Sam, and Tony continued their investigation, they learned that Michael had attempted to return to New York to tie up loose ends and then flee again. The team's efforts intensified as they prepared for Michael's imminent return. They set up surveillance on key locations Michael was known to frequent, hoping to catch him in the act. The surveillance paid off. One evening, Tony spotted Michael entering a luxurious apartment building. With Sam and Daniel in tow, they followed Michael's movements. The tension was palpable as they watched Michael through a pair of binoculars, noting his interactions and conversations. Inside the apartment, Michael was seen meeting with several individuals, discussing plans and arranging for his final departure. It was clear that he was still deeply involved in the elaborate deception. The evidence gathered during this meeting was crucial for Daniel's case. The team's next move was to confront Michael with the gathered evidence. They planned a strategic approach to ensure they caught him red-handed. Daniel, Sam, and Tony, accompanied by local authorities, executed their plan flawlessly. Michael was apprehended as he attempted to leave his apartment, and the overwhelming evidence against him was presented. Michael's arrest was a significant victory for Daniel, but the journey was far from over. The legal proceedings began, and Daniel's focus shifted to clearing his name and ensuring that justice was served. The case against Michael was strong, and the truth about his fraudulent activities became increasingly evident. In the midst of the legal battle, Daniel's relationship with Emily continued to flourish. The adoption was finalized, and Emily officially became a part of Daniel's family. The joy of having her in his life was a beacon of hope amidst the ongoing struggles. As the court case progressed, Daniel's innocence was gradually proven. The truth about Michael's elaborate scheme and Daniel's wrongful dismissal came to light. The legal system acknowledged the injustice Daniel had faced, and he was reinstated at his job. In a surprising twist, Sam received a call that would change his life forever. A DNA test revealed that Sam was the long-lost son of John Skinner, a wealthy businessman. The revelation was both shocking and life-changing for Sam, offering him a new perspective on his own past. With Michael Lawson now facing legal consequences and Daniel's reputation restored, the story took a turn toward resolution. The challenges and obstacles they had faced were daunting, but the pursuit of justice had prevailed. Daniel, now with Emily and a renewed sense of purpose, looked forward to a future filled with hope and new beginnings. The courtroom was bustling as the final day of Michael Lawson's trial began. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as Daniel Blake, now vindicated and reinstated as a cardiologist, prepared to face the culmination of his long and arduous journey for justice. The evidence against Michael was overwhelming, and the truth about his deception was clear to everyone. Daniel sat in the front row, flanked by his friends Sam Collins and Tony Roberts. Emily, now a bright, cheerful 5-year-old, was with them, drawing comfort from her new family in the midst of the tense proceedings. The little girl had become a beacon of hope for Daniel, her presence a reminder of the love and resilience that had kept him going. Michael Lawson sat at the defendant's table, his once confident demeanor now replaced with anxiety. The courtroom was packed with spectators and reporters eager to witness the final verdict. Daniel took a deep breath, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. From the shock of losing his job to the discovery of the truth about Michael's escape plan. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. Michael's trial had captured the public's attention, and today was the day the verdict would be announced. Daniel had prepared himself for this moment, knowing that the outcome would not only affect his career but also his sense of justice and personal redemption. After hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Michael Lawson was found guilty of fraud, conspiracy, and several other charges related to his elaborate scheme. The courtroom erupted in murmurs of approval, and Daniel felt a wave of relief wash over him. The truth had prevailed, and Michael's deception had been exposed for all to see. As the judge sentenced Michael to prison, Daniel's thoughts were already turning towards the future. The trials and tribulations he had faced were now behind him, and he was ready to embrace a new chapter in his life. His relationship with Emily was a source of immense joy, and the legal victory had restored his reputation. Outside the courtroom, Daniel, Sam, and Tony gathered for a quiet celebration. Sam had received a surprising and life-changing revelation during the trial. A DNA test had confirmed that he was the long-lost son of John Skinner, a wealthy businessman who had been searching for him for years. The discovery had opened new doors for Sam, offering him a connection to his past and a newfound sense of belonging. Daniel clapped Sam on the back, sharing in his friend's joy. "I'm really happy for you, Sam. It's amazing how things can turn around." Sam smiled, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thanks, Daniel. I couldn't have gotten through this without you and Tony. Your support means the world to me." As they celebrated, Emily played nearby, her laughter ringing out as she enjoyed the company of her new family. The bonds between them had grown stronger throughout the ordeal, and the sense of unity and love was palpable. The final resolution came with Daniel's reinstatement at the hospital. The medical board had conducted a thorough review of the case and, recognizing the injustice Daniel had suffered, offered him his position back. It was a bittersweet moment, as it symbolized the return to normalcy and the restoration of his professional life. Daniel's work at the hospital resumed with renewed passion. His experiences had deepened his empathy and commitment to his patients, and he approached his role with a sense of purpose and gratitude. The challenges he had faced had only strengthened his resolve to make a positive impact in his field. The story concluded with a sense of closure and new beginnings. Daniel, Sam, and Emily embarked on their new lives with hope and optimism. The trials had tested their resilience and character, but the journey had also revealed the power of truth, compassion, and the importance of family, both biological and chosen. In the end, the story of Daniel Blake was one of redemption, perseverance, and the triumph of justice. The bonds forged through adversity and the pursuit of truth had created a foundation for a brighter future, filled with promise and the possibility of new beginnings.